But no, yeah, we started, and so it was more like we were, because it wasn't a creative team at that back then. We really just had a booking committee, and I will tell you, um, we really didn't get any help from the office or anything, which is not. I'm not saying that we should have or shouldn't have. It was just that we were basically told, hey, you guys are the team. I need you guys to come up with ideas and get back with me, from Eric. And so what happened was we started brainstorming. We get together every day and we'd be brainstorming. And that's where I got to know Chris Canyon and become great friends with Chris Canyon. And just for the record, he became, we all had a very tight knit group that we used to call the FOP, the Friends of Paige, because Paige is always, all of us had, Paige had kind of gone to bat for all of us at one point or another. And so we became great friends. We spent a lot of time together, me, him, Brian Clark, and eventually Ernest, when Ernest came on board. And we just brainstormed day after day after day. And when we started, we just were like, okay, who should these first two personas be? And I like to say persona or gimmicks because, when you say character, I know character is an easy word to use, but the way I look at it is actors play characters, and when you meet the actor, you don't meet the character. Like if you meet Tom Cruise, you don't meet Maverick, you meet Tom Cruise. But when wrestling fans meet us, then, if I meet someone in an airport or wherever, at this point, they expect to meet Glacier. If they're a wrestling fan, they don't really care much about meeting Ray Lloyd. I don't think, so, because Ray Lloyd's pretty boring compared to Glacier, so, so we started with, okay, I was like, okay, who do I relate most to? And it was just happened to be Sub-Zero because my favorite color's always been blue. So my high school colors were blue and gold, so it's just one of those things where blue and silver and black kind of like, okay, I want those to be my colors. And then Canyon was like, hey, I like the green and the serpent character and all that stuff. So that's where it started. And then I give Andre a lot of credit. He took tons and tons of notes. We started off with Glacier. It was up over about 150 names to start with. And we just kept whittling it down. And eventually we got to the final 10 names. And then the funny story is that when we got down to the final few, we kind of band together to kind of campaign to Eric for Glacier because if I remember correctly, Eric was really sold on Cryonic. He kind of thought the name should be Cryonic, and so we made our final pitch to him. We're like, okay, here's what we'll do. How about we all say, we think it should be Glacier, and the final move, his finishing move, will be the Cryonic kick. And so that's kind of we pitched it to Eric, and he kind of rolled it around, and he's like, okay, all right, we'll go there. But yeah, it was a long process of going through just different names and different titles and different colors and all of that stuff, and Andre really forming the armor and the helmet thing, even though the helmet thing was kind of short lived. But once again, this had never really been done before. This kind of time and effort and money had never really been put into finding the athlete and then building the gimmick around the athlete. Now it's pretty standard, especially with WWE and NXT and things like that. But and not to say that we take credit for any of that, but I'm just saying though that's really how this happened. Is the people were found first, and then the personas were created around the people.
Absolutely, yeah. So when they create Glacier, you finally, you got the name, you guys got the look. Do you like just the sense of okay, we're going to build them up as a surprise? Blood runs cold. Are you loving that? Are you feeling that?
Yeah, and I will tell you one thing. It's one of the things that I've learned over the years because what I realized, I was in the wrestling business 9 years before I got my break. Almost right at 9 years. And what I realized when we worked as a group to create Mortis and Wrath and Glacier, and Ernest Miller was kind of Ernest because he was already Ernest the Cat Miller, and he was already a 3-time world karate champ. We still had the mold of wrestling persona there, but it was a lot easier because he was going to be based a lot off of what he brought to the table already, in the real world. But the one thing that I had to learn, because I remember exactly where I was. I was at the power plant, and I was trying to figure out how does Glacier move in the ring? How does he, who is Glacier? And I remember I was really frustrated. And Paige walks by, and he says, he's like, bro, what's wrong? And I said, Paige, and this is early on, obviously. I said, I have no idea who Glacier is. I said, I don't know who he's supposed to be, blah, blah, blah. Because once again, we weren't getting help from anybody else in the office, And And I remember him saying, he said, well, bro, you better figure it out, because if you don't know who Glacier is, the audience certainly won't know who Glacier is. And and I do, I credit Andre with this, because Andre, we sat down, me, him, all of us sat down, and Andre said, look, let's do it exactly like, they do with the character when they were sitting down to write a script. Like, what's the backstory of the character? We have to create these backstories. And so, and then that's when, and at that point in wrestling, I was borderline obsessive with wrestling. I obsessed with it. I really was. And it was just, it was, I lived, ate, slept, breathed wrestling back then. It was just, and I know Canyon was the same way. So was Jim Mitchell. Brian had already come off of a great run at WWF as Adam Bomb. I knew his commitment because we kind of came up through the Georgia Indies together as well. And I remember sitting down, and once I had it in my head, okay, I have to create like who, and it's like I always tell our trainees, you have three options. You can go totally fiction. Everything can be, you can totally make everything up, or you can pull from your real life, or like what I did with Glacier is you can mold the two of those worlds together. Take some from each one of those worlds and create who that persona is. And so what we did with Glacier was, Eric really loved the family history I have in law enforcement. But both my parents were career Georgia State Patrol. My twin brother was a state trooper. My two uncles were in law enforcement. I mean, everybody but me, And so even though I have a cop haircut, look like I probably should have been a cop. But and so he really liked that. He wanted to play off of that. So we created the whole story of me going to train, in Japan, overseas, and I had this old ancient kind of Mr. Miyagi type instructor, and I remember, us going to, Sonny Ono was good friends with Eric. He was already a part of WCW, and they were saying, I remember we asked his son, like, where should Glacier be from? And just one day he just said, oh, just from Serenji Temple, Tokyo, Japan, And, I would find out later that Serenji Temple is not even in Tokyo, Japan. but nobody questions it. It sounds valid. We go with it. And, but yeah, so what we did was we combined all this, the history of the law enforcement in my family and the Japanese, journey that was totally fiction, and we brought those together, and not totally fiction. I mean, I wrestled with UWFI in Japan for a few years, so right. I had gone there, I had trained there, so it wasn't necessarily totally fiction. It just as far as the old master and things like that, we had added that element to it. So I'd stand corrected being that it was totally fiction, but what we did, Eric, if you look back at any of the original first several matches where I was on Nitro, Eric talked a lot about that. Like he came from a family of law enforcement. He had to make a decision. Was he going to go that route, or was he going to go more of the martial arts world and maybe pursue a career competing in whatever world that was? Of course, it would end up being pro wrestling. So, and I did. I competed in martial arts tournaments when I was younger. I fought full contact karate when I was in college during the off season of football. So, those things were all true elements. And so, and that's what I tell now with all of our trainees. And when I do seminars, because I always say, do you really know who if you have a gimmick name, do you know who that person is? And when I say, do you know who it is? Create your backstory. Like, as far as that gimmick, like where, like, just say Glacier, like, where is Glacier from? What's Glacier's favorite color? What kind of vehicle does Glacier drive? Does Glacier have siblings? If he has siblings, does he get along with those siblings?
Right.
Does he come from a single parent home or both or two parents, or maybe he was adopted? Like, who is this person? And the more you can answer those questions, like, does he drive a truck? Does he ride a motorcycle? If he rides a motorcycle, does he ride a Harley, or does he ride a crotch rocket? Like, all those things. And once you know all those answers, then you start to know who your persona is in the ring. And it makes it, cutting promos probably one of the hardest things in wrestling that people have to learn, but it makes cutting promos, you get a much clearer vision of what your message can be in promos, because of the fact that you know through and through who this person is. And I had to learn that, because for the first 9 years of wrestling, I thought I kind of understood that, but I never was really forced to do what I had to do with Glacier to really get very specific, because they were going to have to tell the world who this person was, came out of nowhere, other than the vignettes that ran way too long, But once again, they were figuring it out as they went. And so certain things, went as according to plan. And I don't know if I was never really told for sure, like, the vignettes that did run, even Canyon and I were like, oh man, like we're ready to get out there. Come on, But it was one of those things, like I said, a lot of this was being done for the first time. So they were trying to figure out, okay, did we go a little bit further with that, or did we pull the trigger and put him out there right now? So yeah, but but I'll tell you this, I don't really regret any of it. The stuff that went right, maybe the stuff that didn't go as right as we wanted it to, because here's why, I embrace all of it because of this, John, is the fact that somebody had to do it first. Somebody had to do all that first. And there were always going to be things that were done right and things that maybe could have been done better. But somebody had to be first. And we were, as far as I know, we were really that first kind of group that really was presented in that manner, where all this time and money and investment had been spent ahead of time. And, it was terrifying and exciting at the same time. Incredibly stressful at times.
Yep. The thing is, it's okay. Blood runs cold. We don't know who it is. They're building it up with the cool video packages, very Mortal Kombat-esque. Even the music sounds a little bit like Mortal Kombat-esque. Do you think that, in essence, like it's a little too close to Mortal Kombat, or is it a good thing?
Yeah, well, in pro wrestling, everybody knows pro wrestling feeds off what's popular in society. Typically. So, of course, that was really popular. So, at this time, WCW offices were still in the CNN Center downtown. So, I just have to believe that, that there would be conversations that were being thrown around was, hey, Mortal Kombat's popular. We see that. We own a wrestling company. How can we make this, merge these two worlds together, And, but at the beginning, what happened, if you go back and you look, my look did change. There was a period where I got pulled off TV for about I don't know, maybe 6-8 weeks, but after I kind of really got some traction. But what happened was, I remember Eric called me in his office and he said, that the company that owned the rights to Mortal Kombat felt like it was a little confusingly similar. And so, and I was so afraid that they were going to pull the plug on everything. So I remember saying, Eric and I have a conversation, because I remember Eric saying, that, hey, Ray, you know me, I love a good fight, but I don't know if we'll win this one. And
yep.
But I remember saying, look, the armor, the helmet, all that stuff is not Sub-Zero. And so how about we my ring tights looked it looks really similar to what Sub-Zero looked like then, with the blue and the black and the,
yep.
The front. And so I said, look, why don't we just, before, I don't think pulling the plug was ever really specifically said, but that's what I felt like was about to happen. And I just said, why don't we do this? And it was, once again, I was more of a group. We had all, Andre and Chris and, Kane, we all talked, and it was like, hey, let's just, pull Glacier off TV for just a little bit, and let's change what he wears in the ring when he wrestles. Let's go more blue and silver. Let's go more royal blue than deep blue. And let's take all the black out and let's try that. And we did. And thank God that seemed to kind of ease the water some from that point on.
Do you like that, you're pumping it up, you're leading in, like whenever they do vignettes, everyone's like, oh, who is it? Who is it? Is that almost a little bit too much pressure? Because there's some speculation. Is it Ultimate Warrior? You know what I mean? Is it like there's people are saying, oh, it's got to be some huge name, and what I mean, or like a blast from the past? Like, is that to you a little bit of like pressure? It's like, okay, maybe you don't build it up like it's this guy from the WWF or something. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it was, it was indescribable pressure. I don't know if I've ever been able to put it into words, but it also was. Let me just say this too. I was so blessed and fortunate to be among a group of the guys that became great friends. Ernest Miller is still one of my greatest friends to this day. And I just saw him earlier this week. And so, as they say, there's strength in numbers. So we were spending an awful lot of time together, me and Ernest and Brian Clark and Chris Canyon and Jim Mitchell and Dallas. So we would actually, you'll say that sometimes you're so afraid of and nervous of what may happen that you can't help but laugh. So when we would hear that somebody would say, oh, it's, the word is on the street that it's so-and-so, we just laugh. We're like, man, they're really going to be surprised when it's me that comes out, Yep. But I remember Eric, being pretty clear about the fact that he wanted it to be someone that when people saw the Glacier, they didn't just see that it was some other name that had been repackaged. And at that point, I had not been on a national level anywhere. I had built a pretty darn good name in Japan with UWFI, but not in the States. I'd wrestled mostly as a tag team. And you know, I had built a great reputation throughout the Southeast, but I really didn't wrestle much outside the Southeast those first 9 years. So as far as me, you know, no one had really seen me. So when they saw Glacier, at least it was someone they had not seen before on a national level. So I really believe that did help. Canyon and I mean, all of us, but especially me and Canyon, because Canyon had been in the wrestling business about the same time I had. His level of love for wrestling was borderline obsession like me. And he and I, one of the reasons we became such great friends is that I remember, like, we would, you know, we'd be at the power plant every day for like the first, gosh, I don't know. I mean, that first year, I mean, we were at the power plant, you know, literally, you know, every day it was open, you know, and which is, you know, and you had to earn your stripes in the power plant every day you went in. Nothing was given to you. Every day you went back in, you started from scratch again. but I remember us having conversations so many times saying, like, this is our break, man. This is our opportunity. We cannot squander this. We have to be as ready as we can possibly be. And so we would go to the power plant, we would train, we would video it. Dallas was the guy who really started that whole ball rolling back in the day on videoing your matches, you know. And so we invested in a video camera. We would video the stuff at the power plant. We'd all go, we'd finish there around 4 o'clock. We'd go to the Main Event Fitness. We'd train there. We'd all go home, get cleaned up, get something to eat. We'd usually meet at Canyon's apartment at the time and watch what we had done that day in the ring. And sometimes we meet at Dallas's house or whatever, but it was that kind of commitment day in, day out. I mean, and that's what, and when, you know, and I didn't realize back then that we were necessarily, you know, that work ethic was that, you know, and when I see people now who don't have that kind of work ethic and that kind of commitment to really trying to make it at a level where they're going to be making a living doing this, it gets very frustrating to me because I know what I had to do. And I try so hard to never be that person. Oh, back when I was, you know, I never want to be that person, but I can say right now that I'm on the other side of it, that I'm really, really proud of how hard we worked and how serious we took that, because it was, we protected and guarded those personas. And they meant a lot to us. And we took it very personal if people didn't, you know, if they didn't appreciate what we had done to really make those personas, you know, entertaining and believable and something that would captivate your attention for hopefully however long we'd be out there. And that's one main thing I do remember Eric saying in the very beginning is he said, I know these guys are going to look like video game characters. He said, but I want everything to be played very straight in the ring. I don't want it to be funny. I don't want it to be silly. I don't want it to be campy. I don't want it to be comedic. I want these guys, when you guys go at it, I want you guys to go at it. I want you to kick each other. I want you, and unfortunately, you know, I mean, I have a great saying that's actually with Pro Wrestling Tees, right? They came out with a T-shirt recently with me and Glacier and Canyon on the T-shirt, and Julio, who I was working with, you know, putting it together. He said, what do you think we should name the T-shirt? I said, well, there's a great saying that Canyon and I had. We should say good friends, better enemies, you know? So, you know, and that was true. I mean, we went in there, we went hard. I mean, we went really hard, and we were hitting in safe places, but man, we tagged the crap out of each other, because it was just one of those things where we kind of knew that's what Eric was kind of looking for a little bit, and fair or not. And like I said, we kind of gladly embraced it, but because we knew too, like, the one thing that people are going to want to easily pick apart is, you know, how do they kick? How do they chop? I mean, and so we couldn't, you know, we had to really kind of go a little bit on the other edge of that, because the one thing people were waiting to do was just pick that stuff apart. And I was going to, like, you know, you're not going to pick apart my kicks. You're not going to pick apart my leg sweeps. You're not going to pick that stuff apart.
Compared to what was going on in WCW when the NWO comes, very real. They're using the real names. They're taking over the company. Everything is very real. Do you think that doing the Glacier, the cartoon stuff, I know Bishop always says the buffet, everybody, you got your different thing, but I know the kicks are legitimate and it's like legitimate martial arts, but do you think that the characters itself, it's almost like too cartoony for what they were doing with the NWO, which was so like, this is real, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, I heard somebody say this, and it might have been Eric that said this on one of his podcasts, but I think it kind of sums it up really good. Is in January of '96, the whole blood runs cold thing sounded like a really, really good thing. But by the time of the fall of '96 and NWO had debuted, maybe not as good of an idea as it seemed in January of '96. So I get that, but no one knew, no one could predict that was going to happen, you know, And what I do say, one of the things I really am thankful to Eric and to WCW at that time is the fact that they kept going with it. They kept us on board, and they kept saying, you know, we're going to to keep pushing this. So yeah, and I'm always a big advocate of, I feel like there should be a buffet as well. But let's face it. I mean, now you look back now. I mean, everything in WCW, and I mean literally everything, took a backseat to the NWO. I mean, that was what was driving the ship, and it changed the face of wrestling forever, really, but especially during that period. So our thing was, once again, I go back to, let's concentrate on what we can control. When we go out there, we have to go out and we have to do the very best we can. And I will say, one of the things that I'm really proud of is, not once, and I don't care what this. Like I said, there's critics that write all this stuff, that there are certain things, I think, the stories, like anything else, that gain the snowball effect over the years, like to say that the character, or the persona was not popular with the fans, and that people, didn't like it, or people thought it was silly, whatever. Here's what I can tell you. And this is from the horse's mouth, John. Not once do I ever remember being booed when I was Glacier as a babyface. When I was Glacier as a heel, that's what I wanted, and not once do I ever remember the crowd chanting boring or anything like that. I take that back. One time, I think we're in maybe somewhere like Cincinnati or Cleveland, but they were chanting boring for everything that night. but I mean, that's what I know from someone who lived it, is that we went out there and we entertained the audiences. And I do think that I look at I'm a big, and a lot of this I give credit to Paige, because Paige is literally the most positive person I know. He really does walk that walk. And that was one of the things that he, was telling us during that time, is like, look, find the positive. Like, everything else is so reality based. They're going out there, and the NWO is the NWO, and it's doing all this stuff. When you guys go out there, give them a little bit of a welcome relief, for a little period of time from that. Give them something else that they can dive into and say, okay, this is different, and I can kind of set all that on the side, and I can really enjoy this for what it is. And I'm glad we got the opportunity, because, I mean, we started in '96, the fall of '96, and we were on board. I mean, we were all there. I was up there almost right until the bitter end. I think my second contract ran out right around maybe January of '96, and then I was at that time I was in discussions with them to come on board as a coach at the power plant. Because Orndorff and I had become really great friends, and Orndorff really liked my commitment to wrestling, and he liked the fact that I always was at the power plant, even when I didn't have to be. And so I was in talks with the office to kind of transition to more of a coach at that point, and then still make kind of appearances here and there as Glacier on TV or whatever, where it was Saturday night or whatever. Yep. But so I was there for that whole 5-year period, and as most of us were, and I mean, eventually, obviously, Ernest and Canyon would leave to go to WWE, but I was there pretty much for that whole time, but yeah, it's so at the end of the day, the way I look at it is that did it go exactly the way that we planned for it to go? Of course not. But the overwhelming majority of people in the wrestling business, their careers don't go exactly how they expect them to go. Right? And but the one thing I'm most proud of, John, seriously, is, and I was just saying this, it was either yesterday or the day before with our trainees, here's the thing I'm most proud of, is the fact that, one, that if me or Canyon or whoever, if we would have not been at that level where we could get in the ring and have a match with anybody on that roster and have a respectable match, then they would have found a way to get rid of us. And they kept us around. And I have to believe that I was very, very big. I still am very, very big on presenting myself as a professional, because I was very fortunate earlier in my career to get to know Lou Thez from when I wrestled in Japan. And Lou just imparted so much knowledge and wisdom upon, to me, as he did a lot of other people, about, take the role of being a professional wrestler really seriously and present yourself as a professional in every single way you can. And I did.